Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Career Insights 501. And today is the last episode or infosode of the season. And we have a very special guest with us, Evan Hosaka. I met him in Vegas a couple of months ago. I think it was July or August. I can't remember, but he's going to end the season here with us, and he's going to end it on a high note, I guess, some type of note. But you'll be feeling good by the time you get to the end of this episode. Evan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Carlos. It's great to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. So you all, the special thing that we have planned here today with Evan is he partnered with me to create an official drink for Career Insights. So it is a adult beverage, a cocktail. Evan is we talked about this a little bit earlier before we started, mixologist, but he and his friends at work like to refer to themselves as something else. Do you want to tell them what that is, Evan?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we kind of don't try to use the term mixology. I mean, we're just bartenders putting together drinks. So out of fun, when guests ask, "Are you like a mixologist?" We just say, "Oh no, actually, we're cocktailologists. We make cocktails." We usually get a good laugh out of that.
Actually, that might be more appropriate, a more appropriate term, but of course, I don't think that's going to translate well into pop culture. But for Career Insights, we're going to brand you a mix master. So that's going to be your title for us. Evan, tell the people a little bit about yourself before we get into the drink. So if you all are actually watching this on Spotify or YouTube, you can see the drink that Evan has came up with us. For us behind his shoulder there. So actually, Evan, let's get into that first, because I know we talked about the time restraints with the drink. So if you could just tell the people, what's going on with the drink, and if you came up with a name for it, you can introduce that to the world as well.
Thank you. So the cocktail sitting here to behind me here, I actually didn't come up with a drink for it just yet. I wanted to talk with you about that. But essentially, I know that we talked about tequila being, I think, your favorite spirit. So this is a tequila-based cocktail. It falls underneath your swizzle category. Swizzle's not too far from even mojitos, crushed ice drinks. Typically, you'll see rum, different types of spirits with berries or bitters. So this very much follows that format. Inside of this cocktail, you got your tequila base. It's gonna have some fresh lime juice, some simple syrup, which is just a sugar, dissolved down with some water. On the bottom, we have the blackberries muddled, the crushed ice on top. We pour the cocktail over, and we put a bunch of Angostura bitters, which is a bitters based out of Trinidad, for some aromatics and some complexity. Garnish it with a mint sprig, so it's nice and refreshing.
Nice. I'm excited to try that. I wish I was in Vegas right now so I could walk over right behind you and take that and start drinking that and trying it out. It sounds really good. But yeah, tequila is my favorite spirit. So man, I don't know. I want you to make it for me the first time, but I have to get to Vegas for that to happen. So here's a close up of it, everybody. If you all are listening or looking, watching, and you stepped away, he's holding up a close up of the drink now. So that's how it looks close up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about career starter for the name of the drink, but I don't know. What were you thinking?
Man, that's a good one. I mean, we talked about happy hour being at 501.
Yeah,
You could call it the 501 Swizzle.
I like that. That's actually better than the career starter.
But
Yeah.
I like the Career Starter too, though. I think maybe you guys have your vote, your viewers take a vote on it or something.
Okay. But yeah, I can actually put a poll in the Spotify thing, so I'll make that a poll. The career starter or the 501 swizzle. So those are both good. And you all are lucky because if it was me, I would probably make something kind of like a poison. My friends know that I just like mixing a lot of different spirits together with some random like sweetener or something, and everybody's feeling good before we get out of the house. But you got a sophisticated cocktail that you can try out once we get this posted on the website. So Evan, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're based out in Vegas. What would you like for people just to know about Evan? Who's this great guy that I have on my podcast?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm based out in Vegas. I've been out here for about 7 years. Born and raised in Hawaii. Been in the hospitality industry since I was about 19 years old, just out of high school, and basically just moved throughout the front office department, and then eventually found my way into food and beverage, and then just really started, you know, just trying to do it on a higher level in terms of hospitality, just making great cocktails, learning a little bit about spirits, and just bringing the skill set that I was fortunate enough to develop through great mentorship and coaches to the Las Vegas market and to the guests that come out for entertainment in what I think is one of the greatest cities in the world for that.
Nice. Vegas definitely is a great city. It has a lot going on, especially for tourists. I think it's the MGM Sphere. I got a chance to see that when I was out there last. It's pretty amazing. Um, uh, uh, how did you get into um, bartending or mixology? Is it, I guess, what did that look like starting out in? Well, I'll take that back because when I worked at Disney, I know that people who were under the age of 21 could, I think, pour beers and serve them to guests, but couldn't drink. It was something weird. Um, but from the age of 19 in hospitality, where did you start at and how did you end up into um, mixing drinks?
Yeah, that's so my story when I started in hospitality, to I guess to kind of really get at the beginning of it, I started at a Pizza Hut, KFC, like just for food and beverage. And
Hmm.
that was like the first service-based jobs that I did. With Pizza Hut, I was actually a delivery driver for pizza. My buddy actually told me, "Hey, deliver pizza, you can make tips." At the time, I was actually a produce delivery driver for a warehouse, and I was
Hmm.
driving trucks. So he said, "Hey, you can drive and you can make tips." I was like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense." So I went and did that for a little bit, and then another buddy of mine told me and he was working in Waikiki at the time. Says, "Dude, you're driving your car making tips, but you're putting mileage on your car. Why don't you
Hmm.
go and drive other people's cars and make more tips?" And so I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So I became a valet. Uh,
Oh.
I eventually moved into the bellhop position, a doorman position for a five-star property out in Waikiki. By the time I think I was 22 years old, at about 24, I started looking for bartending, and the reason why was looking for that transition was for the hotels that I was working at. Uh, they did these things called guest satisfaction surveys, in
Hmm.
which every hotel guest would be sent a survey 2 weeks after they stayed, and some of them take it, some of them wouldn't. But it'll always ask if you had a particular team member that helped you or was kind of influential for your stay. And from the driveways perspective of being like a bellhop, a doorman, a valet, I always did rather well, but I was either second or third on those surveys every single time because I could never seem to beat out the bartender or the concierge. They always seem
Hmm.
to have a little bit more face time with the guest to build that relationship and to really create that experience of hospitality, service, and really like develop an itinerary for their guests. So
Hmm.
I thought about the two positions and decided that the concierge desk, as much as a great job that they do and what they do in terms of hospitality and service for guests and their experience, amazing. But they're often paid a little bit on kickbacks and commissions for the places that they're able to book and sell or make reservations for. Whereas what I noticed at the bartender, not only could they have the creative prowess of making beverages for the guests in real time in front of them, but when it came to making recommendations, they weren't getting kickbacks or anything. So they could actually be very very I don't want to say honest because I don't want to make a concierge not seem honest, of course.
Yeah.
But they could be like complete transparency because there is no other motivation behind how they made recommendations. So when I looked at those two, I decided that hey, I got to go towards the bar route. That's kind of
Hmm.
how I made that transition. But that transition actually took me about 2 more years before I finally got my chance behind a bar.
Nice. And so I have a pizza story. I did pizza delivery for a summer, but the guy that did it before me, he was delivering more than just pizza, and I wasn't. We were in high school, and I wasn't, that advanced, so I wasn't getting the tips that he was getting. But that's crazy just to hear that, because those were a lot of different things within food and beverage and hospitality. So, even just moving away from like the food and beverage part of it and to going into a bellhop position and then going back more into the food and beverage part of it, I think it's pretty amazing. And I'm actually this, were those hotels in Vegas that you were doing this at?
So the valet and bellhop was actually out in Waikiki.
Okay.
I worked at about maybe like 8 different properties in about 4 or 5 years. I tried to bartend out in Waikiki, but the job market for bartending positions are very, very tight. Even to
Hmm.
get a bar assistant position, it was going to be like a very long, probably like a 4 year process of going through like towel passing, passing out towels at the pool, busing,
Hmm.
expediting, food running, lunch server. So I actually moved to California for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and that's where I gained the full service restaurant experience that got me into the bar.
Okay. And could you tell us, clarify, let us know what a bar assistant is? I know you kind of like told their duties there.
Absolutely. So I speak as a bar assistant. As it sounds a little nicer, but essentially a bar assistant's your bar back. They
Mm,
do anything from stocking, cutting garnishes, uh, anticipating needs for the bar as well as the bartender. So that way the bartender can anticipate the needs for the guests and ensure that service goes as seamlessly as possible.
okay. And when you said, I think it was 2 years for you to get in behind the actual bar. Were you doing that bar assistant position before that, or was that part of your initial time behind the bar?
I really like that question, and the reason why is so that majority of that 2 years was actually me applying for jobs in Waikiki and
Hmm.
finding that I just didn't have the experience. Not even I was applying for bar back position, but they're like, "Hey, you don't have the experience. If you go and pass out towels for 6 months, then do the busing for 6 months, expo for 6 months, food run for 6 months, lunch serve for 6 months, provided that nobody with experience is applying for the same position that you're trying to get, then after that you can be a bar back." So there was no way in that type of market to take that many steps back in terms of income with the cost of living out there.
Hmm.
So I went out to the Bay Area to try to get into the restaurant scene because there's so much jobs available in California, especially the Bay, with the cost of living and the income potential for bartenders, especially starting out. That there's a huge rotation of opportunity in terms of that. So I actually the first job that I got when I went to the California Bay Area was in Palo Alto, not too far from Stanford, actually. But I got hired as a busser. I made it known to the owner, also the general manager, that I planned to be a bartender. And within 4 months, the GM and the owner groomed me from busing to food running to expediting to lunch server to dinner server. And we didn't have a bar back at that restaurant. So they put me straight into the bar as a bartender about 4 months later.
Nice. Okay, so my another question is, I guess, do you think how relevant is the bar back experience compared to what an actual bartender or mixologist does? And I want to talk to you more about that too, because I looked it up before I got on the call about a bartender and a mixologist. I actually might have been at the gym when I looked it up, but they were saying how a bartender has like just a lot of different duties, whereas a mixologist focuses on creating these unique um, drinks. But we'll get into that more and whether you agree or not. But back to the bar back experience and duties and how they compare to what an actual, we just say bartender for the sake of conversation, what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my perspective, having the opportunity to be a bar assistant first is better for the guest experience, for the business. And the reason why is a person who just goes straight into bartending the way that I did because we didn't have barbacks. You're you really have somebody that is probably not qualified to be doing the job in front of you, and you're paying the same that you would pay at that restaurant or bar for somebody with a greater skill set. So in my perspective, for the person who's going into the position, it's going to be more beneficial to be a bartender, because you're forced to learn all the bar assistant positions or the bar back position because you don't have one. So you have to be your own. If you
Mm-hmm.
fail to prepare your shift, if you fail to be like 100% ready, you miss the amount of juice you needed to make. You misgauged it. You didn't cut enough lime wedges. You didn't prepare enough mint sprigs. Whatever it might be. When you run out and you don't have anybody to turn to, you have to stop what you're doing, which in turn affects the guests, the servers who are serving drinks to the guests, and all of that kind of. I mean, you learn fast when that kind of stuff happens because your
Mm-hmm.
manager is right there with you. Hey, what's going on? Chewing you out. Hey, we're gonna don't leave after you clock out. We're gonna have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So in that sense, though, you're forced to learn fast, or you find out that maybe the job's not for you. Now, if you have the opportunity to be a bar assistant, you're not, or a bar back, you're not gonna have to have that same degree of pressure, and you're gonna have a lot more mentorship along the way. You're not
Mm.
necessarily gonna have to be the same, have the same level of self-starting in that perspective. And I think that could be based off of your personality type. It could go in either direction in terms of what could be more beneficial. But I think that there's positives and negatives to being a bar back first before bartending. But I definitely do not think it's a necessary step, just depending on the person that you are and the restaurant or the business that you're starting in.
I gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And I've talked about mentor a lot in my current role at Discover. We started a mentorship program and everything. And it's interesting to hear you talk about that when it comes to kind of like that food and beverage or bartender position, because I don't think a lot of people think about um, mentorships in, I would say, jobs outside of a corporate America or a corporate setting. We always tend to think about having a mentor, teaching us how to climb the corporate ladder. But I think a lot of bartenders need mentors because I've had quite a few drinks, and all bartenders aren't cut the same. So um, that's for sure. So going back to the second part of that question, or my second question there about a bartender versus a mixologist, like what I said, I read online, a bartender being more of a jack of all trade versus a mixologist being someone who's more specialized in just kind of like one area, and that area is making drinks. Do you agree with that, or is it, I guess, more of a technical definition or something that you just will find in more of like a textbook or online job dictionary?
Okay, so I definitely I think it's a good question, and I think that's probably one of the most common questions that I get over the bar. Uh, I
Mm,
would say that when we think of a mixologist, the only time that should be used in terms of like behind the bar is for your corporate mixologist. And the corporate mixologist's job is to basically curate these cocktails, put the recipes together, something that's going to be a good representation of the bar program. And if it's inside of a restaurant, something that's going to be a good balancing, I guess, product that goes along with the food in a sense. Now, with that said,
mm,
that mixologist, the corporate mixologist, is typically never behind the bar. Their job is mainly to make those drinks, to put it together, and then to, if they are within the operation, it's mainly as a manager's role to basically oversee that everybody is upholding the standards that they set into place, making sure that they're doing things correctly, and that the style of service is going the way that it needs to. So kind of looping back to it, the bartender is absolutely the catch-all overarching position. The bartender oftentimes can do the same thing as a mixologist. It's just they are actively at the operation behind the stick or behind the bar, as we call it. And their job is hospitality first and foremost. To be a bartender and to engage in hospitality means that you should be able to do the things that the mixologist does. You have to be able to pour the drinks that they create. You have to be able to understand beer, the different flavors, the different styles. You need to know your wines. If somebody asks you for a Sancerre and you don't have it, you best know that it's a Sauvignon Blanc, and be able to offer the next best region that you can, or the
Mm-hmm.
next best varietal that you can. Same with spirits, same with cocktails and classics. The bartender's job as hospitality is to ultimately learn enough so that way they can engage in the action of hospitality using the product, the liquor, the beverage, the beer as a tool to engage in that interaction. Now, with the operational side of things and learning efficiency, how to the proper techniques to pouring and doing the job in the most effective way, that is all as well part of the bartender. But most bartenders that work in the realm of craft cocktails, meaning fresh ingredients, cool types of ingredients that are less common, different flavors, they can act definitely in the position as a mixologist. But the mixologist ultimately is more, it's a word that goes more towards creativity.
Mm-hmm.
But the mixologist behind the bar needs to be a bartender.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So a lot of questions came up when you were saying that. I'm going to try to remember them all. How would one get into that corporate space of being a mixologist?
That's a great question. So, I personally have never been I wouldn't say a corporate mixologist. I've been a bar lead at the Venetian resorts. So,
Mm-hmm.
what that means is I had to do a lot of those types of roles, but I did have um, a, a mentor, a coach, a boss that was essentially the corporate mixologist, but on a consulting term. And I reported to him, and he would be the one that would build me in the sense of, hey Evan, I want you to come up with a cocktail for this menu because you're the face of the bar. So therefore, I want you to have a degree of ownership of this menu, and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. But in order to usually walk into a corporate mixologist position, you need to have a degree of marketability. And what I mean by that is you should have been published in a few different articles. You should have worked in a very nice high end spot that's well known. So that way, when the business publishes you or spends money on marketing or PR, you have a name that draws attention, that's recognizable. So having that degree of clout, I think, is very important when you're going to step into that sort of role. Usually you get there by oftentimes entering competitions, winning competitions, or being in a leadership or supervisory role as a bar lead or a bar manager of a very well-known cocktail program or cocktail bar. And then eventually, through networking, through businesses opening a position like a corporate mixologist being needed, you put your name in the hat. And if you're, of course, through the application process and the screening process, if they find that you have the leadership skills, the communication skills, the ability to speak in front of audiences in terms of like public relations, um, then in that sense, you might be the one to get chosen for that role.
Wow, that is so interesting. It sounds very corporate. It sounds like almost being a professor or something, like getting published. Like I would have never thought that that would be part of the equation to, getting into a corporate. I just thought it would be somebody who can make badass drinks. And it's like, oh, come on up. You're making me think of more and more questions. Like I see the competitions. I think they used to come on ESPN. I used to watch them, and I think it's with the Flares when they do all the stuff with the bottles. I should have had a bottle in here to like give you all a demo and spill tequila all over the computer. But is that what it's called, Flares, when they're doing all the stuff with the bottles,
Oh
or is it
yeah,
just straight?
flair bartending. Yeah, that's a huge thing, especially in Las Vegas. We got a bunch of different hotels, different bars that specialize in that. And honestly, we have some of the world's best flair bartenders in this city. Flair bartending, you can think of that movie Cocktail by Tom Cruise. That's kind of
Hmm.
the one that started it all off. TGI Fridays in the late 80s and early 90s kind of headed that. And then eventually that part of bartending kind of grew. And nowadays, even your craft cocktail bartenders are learning how to incorporate what they call working flair into the equation of making their drinks. But yeah, it's definitely called flair. I love flair bartending.
Yeah. Did you dabble in any of that?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that. So when I first started bartending, I was flaring that first 4 months before I got my first bartending spot at the restaurant. I was between lunch and dinner service. I'd go to the park when I was a busser, when I was a lunch server, an expediter, and I'd
Hmm.
flip bottles in the park practicing because I believe that having the dexterity and comfortability and understanding how to pour and do appropriate cuts was going to be important for when I had that opportunity because I knew that we didn't have a barback position.
Hmm.
So I started off as a flair bartender in the Bay Area. There's not many of them, but as soon as I came out to Vegas and had seen what real flair bartending was all about, I realized that I probably had to stay in the realm of craft cocktail. But I started my career doing a bunch of flair. I still have a flair bottle and tins at home. And people, the bartenders that hang out with me here at the house sometimes, they'll a few drinks in, they're gonna ask, "Hey, bust out your flair bottle. Let's see some stuff." But I'm not at the level of these guys out here in Vegas. These guys are just so amazing. They're so talented
Yeah.
and skilled.
Eh, Okay, you said working. You said working flair. Is that the term you use? Now, what
Mhm.
is that?
So working flair is essentially the the flair bartending competition style of bartending. Definition of working flair, to my understanding, is tricks or moves that you can do that will not cause a liquid to spill, no matter how much liquid is inside of the bottle. Now, the terminology that we use, it generally speaking, is moves or tricks behind the bar that you can do that won't cause any more time consumption in the process of making the drink. So what I mean by that is, instead of like picking, I wish I had something better to show you with, but instead of like picking up if this is like the tin, you have to turn it over to put the ice inside of it. Um, it's like, why don't I do like a thumb roll where it flips? Now the open inside is here, and I'll throw the ice in there, flip it, and put it down on top of the bar. So it's
Okay,
it's just as fast or faster by using a trick than it would be to go through a motion as if you didn't know how. So that's kind
gotcha.
of like the general idea of what working flair is regarding typical bar
Huh,
service.
interesting. So I gotta ask this question too. So, because you brought it, like I said, I have 1,000. I'm gonna have to have you back on to go my follow up questions. But what is the process like of a chain restaurant and bartenders? Because if I go to this place that has like $5 Long Island iced teas, we know that's not going to be the best Long Island iced tea in the world. But how do they pick bartenders? Because it seems like they just have anybody in a lot of these chain restaurants bartending. Do you have like any insight on that?
It's I love that question actually. So when it comes to hiring, a lot of the times the managers that do hiring for bartenders were never bartenders themselves.
Mm,
So their ability to vet a actual bartender with a skill set, it's the I think the best way that I can describe it is, I like this book called Peak by Eric. I think it's Eric Anderson or something. Anyways, there's a book called Peak, and it talks about deliberate practice versus purposeful practice. Deliberate practice is all about developing the skills, not just having the knowledge. A lot of people can speak their way through something, but not actually know how to go and execute it. I think the largest part about hiring bartenders is knowing and seeing how they're going to move behind a bar. Most places, for liability reasons or whatever it might be, will not go through that process. They'll just look at a resume, which half the time these places don't do checks on the resume. So people often kind of um, spruce it
lie.
up a little bit. Yeah, they lie essentially. And that causes them to get hired. And obviously, I think everybody would agree that the cost of hiring, onboarding, and training is pretty expensive for a company, especially if the company has a high degree of turnover. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, they'll give the benefit of the doubt that this person's just getting used to it, and because the bar is so diverse. Like if you think of like the Cosmopolitan, for instance, you can
Mm-hmm.
find 3 to 5 different recipes on how to make a Cosmo. So a person walking into uh, like American fast casual American spot that has a liquor license and a bar program, so to say, anybody can walk into that place and basically tell the senior bartender or the person training them, when the ticket pops up, it says, "Hey, we need a Cosmo." If they don't have a standard for the Cosmo, um, they could literally just tell the trainer, "Hey, how do you guys make your Cosmo here? Because I don't want to mess that up and misrepresent your brand."
Mm-hmm.
And the trainer will go and tell them whatever the recipe is or the way that they make the Cosmo and the stuff. And so a lot of bartenders have a tendency to just try to learn on the fly. And in my perspective, that's actually very detrimental to guest experience. And I think that's it's an interesting shift of what's kind of happening. People can know their drinks, knowledge base, but being able to do it, assemble it in a fast sort of manner for a place that serves those $5 happy hour drinks in a high volume setting, that's completely night and day.
Yeah.
So that's one of the hardest things about hiring bartenders is the fast like difference in skill set behind that bar. And I could talk about that all day. It makes so much more of a difference once you get to, I guess you could say, like middle to higher, like the $3 sign restaurants and above. That's when you start seeing a jump in skill set to people that actually have true traditional training, you could say.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense. Because again, I'm a shots person, but as I've gotten older, I try to become more classy. So I try to do,
Yeah,
cocktails.
I'm beer and wine myself.
I I try to do more of the craft cocktails. So I always like to go somewhere that has nice craft cocktails or unique craft cocktails. Um, I wanted to ask about the quality of the liquor that goes into a drink and how big of a difference does that make on the quality or the taste of the drink. Now, from my personal experience with Long Island iced teas, I'll say it makes a big difference. But I don't know if, and with Long Island iced teas, we need to have like a little special section on that. Are some people putting Coke in there? And it seems like some people are putting something else in there. Like, what's the brown stuff that people are putting in the Long Island iced teas?
So it is Coca-Cola. The Long Island iced tea should always have Coca-Cola as a lot of people put it on top. I personally have been trained to put it in the tin, so when you strain it off, it mixes thoroughly and you have a balanced cocktail throughout. But essentially, the Long Island iced tea should kind of look like an Arnold Palmer, like a split of lemonade and regular iced tea, and that's kind of how it should look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
But
because
to answer your other question regarding the spirits, you're 100% spot on that the quality of the spirits that go into the cocktail makes a huge amount of difference. First of all, the quality of the spirits will determine whether or not you're going to have a severe hangover or not. Then there's the taste factor that goes into it. Basically, you're thinking about distillation quality. The better the distillation quality, the more pure the ethanol is, and the less congeners, the stuff that your body can't really process as well, is what ultimately, when you think of like bathtub gins, like the prohibition area where they're making their own distillation with no true training or licenses, they're thinking that when they distill, everything's coming out as alcohol, but the first part of the run, the distillation process, and the last part of it, they call it the heads and the tails, and there's a lot of congeners, that stuff that hurts your liver and could potentially make you go blind in some instances.
hmm
That stuff, you want to let it go and keep the heart, and each time you run that distillation again, you're taking off the heads and the tails, you're keeping the heart, which is the best part of the ethanol, the purest part, and that's the part that is going to basically get you drunk, and that's going to be of the highest quality. The reason why the low quality brands have more congeners is they're trying to increase their yield, right?
Mm,
So you're 100% spot on when you say that you can taste the difference. The congeners have all the flavor, but not necessarily the best of the flavor in a sense. So they'll put the cheaper stuff. They're going to keep it in there. They're going to charge you less because they get a better yield, and they don't do as high quality in that sense. And you will taste the difference. You will absolutely feel the difference the next day for sure.
gotcha. Makes sense.
Hi, this is Evan Hosaka. You're listening to Career Insights 501 with Dr. Loso.
So another question that I had was, I went to Chicago, I think it was last year, the year before last, for a CompTIA conference, and we had a lady that was part of the panel, and she said that her husband taught at a university, and that he taught classes on, she said how to become a bartender. So I don't know if it was a toxicologist or something like that, but she said that people typically get these degrees and go and work for like the police to do like toxicity tests, I guess, with the blood alcohol level and stuff like that. Have you heard anything about that before? Because that was mind blowing for me. I was like, what? You can get a degree and learn how to make drinks? I went to school for the wrong thing.
No, I can't say I've heard of that. Uh, at least for the bartending side, I've heard of like hospitality degrees, travel industry management degrees,
Hmm.
those sorts of degrees. I've never really heard of any degrees that is specific to just bartending. Anyways,
Yeah.
I had I known that, I probably would have pursued it previously when I was a little bit younger out of school and stuff. But I have not heard of that one.
Okay. Yeah. That was weird. I'll see if I can find the lady or somebody at CompTIA that has her information or remembers her, and reach out to her to see exactly what she said that degree was and at what college it was offering it. But I couldn't, when I tried to research it, I couldn't find any. It was kind of like along the lines of the things that you had just mentioned, kind of like hospitality or hotel management and stuff like that. Did you go to college, or you just went straight into the hospitality industry?
So it's not my most proud story, but I'm always happy to share. I share this story very publicly, especially as I coach and train bartenders and bar assistants. But I went to 2 semesters of community college back in Hawaii. I feel bad because my grandmother actually helped me pay for that. My first semester, I passed with 1B. The rest of it, I failed. So 4 classes. The only class that I passed was actually English 22, and I found out that's not even a legit college credit. So I was like, ah, damn. um, but
I
I
wasn't
got
sure if I should laugh or not. I was trying to like hold it in, but
oh man, like I I didn't really do well in the other classes. For the most part, I just I didn't attend, and I definitely didn't apply myself. But I went on academic probation. So the following semester, I I'll be real honest. The following semester, I think, was the spring semester, and the east side of the island had a really good season regarding the surf. Um, and I just got really good at recruiting at that time. So I didn't make it too many of those classes, and I ended up I dropped out of 2 of the classes, and I failed out of the other 2. So after that, I went on to academic suspension, and just kind of never really looked back that route.
Mhm.
With that said, though, regarding education, I read a lot. I've Since I was 18 years old, even if I wasn't like in class, I've always studied a lot on personal development, positive mental attitude, communications, relationships. I just remember somebody on your podcast speaking about the 5 love languages book. I think you spoke about that recently.
Mhm.
That was definitely a good book. I read a lot of books on real estate, which is why I like Bob Thompson's podcast with you.
Mhm.
I've read a lot of books on like Roth IRAs, 401ks, finance, SCPs, simples, and things like that. I do enjoy reading that type of material. In addition to that, I actually have my life insurance license. So I do very particular policies for food and beverage and hospitality professionals that
Nice.
other insurance agents typically don't want to write because of the smaller commission sizes.
Mm,
Um, so I definitely I've listened to your podcast on a bunch of different episodes. So I do hear that you have your PhD. I don't remember what it's in, but I find that just like so amazing that that's a lot of school that I just couldn't see myself being able to complete. I really look up to that. It's admirable for sure.
trust me. Well, you know what? I think that you did yourself a favor. After getting my PhD, um, so I'll say this. I think for me, I always ask God, like, what's my purpose? And I think going through that program led me to my purpose. And of course, maybe there were like 1,000 other ways that I could have gotten to where I'm going and where I'm at. But it's definitely a big part of it. So I do have a lot of frustrations because I was like, I got all this debt, all these degrees, and my career isn't really working out for what I went to school for. But that's another like this inspirational like look towards the light story I'll tell in another podcast. But I think education is transforming in, especially with the younger generations like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and how they view education. I think with things like AI and the rate at which technology is changing and like the way that society is changing to like adapt and deal with the changes in technology, that the formal education isn't suitable or what's the word I'm trying to look for? A PhD. I can't think of a simple word. Is not like the right way to educate people now. And I've talked about this several times. I think that people need to become more researchers. So I think what you're doing, like the stuff that you're doing, being I guess more self-enlightened, self-taught, self-educated, and the things that are important to you is what's really important. And not just to you, but to your profession as a hospitality professional and a bartender. I like so for me, I think that is more important than somebody going to college and getting an education in something that I think is like 60% of people don't have a job in what they went to college for. So it's like a huge waste of time. And then I also think the first 2 years of college is like a repeat of high school, like English, college algebra, history, all this stuff. And so, but I'm not going to get on my tangent about like the whole education system on every podcast. So, but I think you did
Go-
yourself a favor.
I gotta mention that for the listeners, especially like the Gen Zers that follow your podcast and stuff. I'm sure you'll be able to link it in the show notes and stuff. But you had a really good um podcast episode with I can't remember, Dr. Amanda, I think,
hmm
where you folks actually talked about the education system and how it's affecting Gen Z and Chat GPT, and how she said that she's transitioning this education system's transitioning more to proof of proficiency or something. I can't remember the exact
hmm
term, but I thought that you both did an amazing job talking about it and really like dissecting and like just really really deep diving into that. And I really thought that was a great episode. I think all your listeners who is contemplating anything regarding education and school definitely need to listen to what you and the other doctor had to say about that. That was really enlightening.
Thank you. Dang, bro, you really did listen to the a lot of the episodes.
It
I
was
was
a
like,
lot of great material. I hope your viewers and your listeners choose to go through the different ones, because you had a lot of great episodes, a lot of great insights. The name, Career Insights 501. I didn't know that the 501 was a happy hour inspiration, but the Career Insights, big time. Like everybody
yeah.
that spoke on your podcast that I've heard so far did an amazing job, especially with the questions that you ask and how you frame them. Really
hmm
puts it in a way that they're able to open up and shed light on all the different topics that you've discussed.
Yeah. Thank you. The 501 actually has two meanings. The happy hour part was the first meaning, but then I was trying to do career insights, but like everybody has a podcast. with career. Like there is a career insights on Spotify, and there's career insights something that's also like, so that was my thing. But the 501 also is kind of like college. You know, well, you didn't really go to your classes, so you might not. So, you know, like in college, the freshman level, sophomore level, like at my college, it was 1,000 for freshmen, 2,000 for sophomores, 3,000 for, you know, juniors and seniors were 4,000. And so I kind of like framed it around 501 is where like college begins and the ends in the real world begins. So it's kind of like instead of like a 101 class, like this is 501 is kind of like this is the real world. And so that kind of like plays into my whole theming of people coming on here and being very authentic about their careers and stuff like that. So it's happy hour and then
Gotcha.
that kind of like real world perspective. Like we
No, that
call it
makes a
real
lot of
world
sense.
education. Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I love that. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so I got to work on marketing and advertising the last quarter of this year. So that's what I'll be doing after I finish my workbook up. But yeah, I forgot where we were at. I don't know. We've talked about a lot. Is there anything else that you want to mention or talk about as far as your career goes? I know you do some consulting, so I
Yeah.
definitely want to give you the opportunity to talk about that on the side. You know what you do.
Yeah, like for anybody that's for the viewers and listeners, if they're thinking about bartending, whether it be a career or just a moonlighting position to supplement what their needs, especially in a world of inflation. um Again, going back to AI with some jobs being eliminated and people are kind of looking out there. After the pandemic happened, there was a lot of industry veterans. In their When I say industry veterans, you're talking people in their 30s and 40s.
Mm.
The shelf life on a bartender isn't as long as other fields, of course. You get a little
Okay,
bit
time out.
achy and
Why is that? Is it like supermodel? You got to have a certain look and get injections and all that stuff to stay pretty.
nah. It's the ergonomics of how bars are designed. Bars are designed by people that typically don't work behind a bar.
Mm,
So if you're not like 6'1", 6'2", whatever it is, tall, it's actually hard to work behind the bar because of how deep the ice well is and where the bottles are and
mm,
how far you got to reach over to actually pour and make the drinks. It's really hard on your knees, your hamstrings, your lower back, especially on a higher volume setting. It's just very hard on the body. So you'll see, if you see people that's in their late 30s, like my age and stuff. I'm 37 today. um
happy
if you
birthday.
see them, oh, thank you. If they're in their late 30s, 40s and stuff and pouring, they're typically at a steakhouse, something that's very high end, where the guest check average, the cost, the average amount that a guest spends is in your $200 area and above. Because if you think about the gratuities that's involved with that, being 10, 15, 20, 25%, depending how good of a job you do and the whatever it might be, it's a lot easier to make 2,000 or whatever it is, 3,000 in sales than it is to do that off of $5 happy hour cocktails. So the labor is more achievable
Mm,
when you're starting to ache and you're starting to get older. But regarding what I was trying to mention for people that's thinking about bartending, there's actually a large space in the community right now, because during the pandemic, a lot of the big cities like New York, Chicago, um, Las Vegas, especially. I know that from being here, but any of the cities that had significant shutdowns, the industry veterans, the experienced people that's been doing it for a while, a lot of them left to go back to where they moved from, either to pursue the degree that they had, something that they're passionate about, or to take care of family members that may be aging and are more susceptible to getting sick. So with that said, there's a huge space in which we need more bartenders and more hospitality workers. And nothing against the people coming into the field right now. I'm talking basically Gen Z, but but like they're not always they don't always work with the same mindset that is necessary for operating um, restaurant or a bar type of setting. So there's
Hmm.
definitely a space for it, and I think that anybody that ever thought about it should know that bartending is typically done from the hours of 5 to midnight, 4 to midnight, most typically.
Hmm.
So if they're looking to moonlight, it's a very perfect position to throw a few extra $100 a week into their pockets or whatever it might be. And if they're not sure what they want to do with their life, if they're Gen Zers or maybe they're thinking about going through a career transition, um,
Hmm.
a lot of times going through a career transition, there's an opportunity cost. I think, like, say you have your career but you want to do something else that has a higher ceiling, or that's going to be more something more towards your passion. Sometimes when you start, your floor might be a little lower, and getting through that transitionary period, having the ability to moonlight during the evening is something that could very much fund that opportunity cost that you're giving up by making that career change. So I think there's a lot of benefit to people to getting behind the bar, as well as if you get behind the right type of bar in a right type of city, in a sense where if you want to get a tech job in the Bay, you work at a bar that has a lot of tech people in the middle of the tech hub of Silicon Valley, and you're likely to develop more relationships, get more conversations, and people get to see your personality, and then other opportunities can potentially open up through it. So I think that the idea of just pouring drinks may not necessarily be for everyone, but even as a transitionary position, provided that you will be respectful to the business, the owner, the management team that you work with, and the other
Hmm.
team members you split tips with, and you're willing to put in the effort while you're spending your time there, I think there's actually a lot of opportunity to be had. I'm considered a career bartender, but like I enjoy, just as much as I enjoy bartending, I enjoy looking at real estate investments. I enjoy the relationships I have with the team members I work with, the people that I've developed along the way behind me, my mentors. And most of us within the career bartending space are have a degree of entrepreneurship in us, where we do like to do consulting, where we can add value to the community around us, add value to other people with the skill set that we can share. And then we like to take our bartending income and put it into funding our own retirements. So there's a lot of different ways that I think people, if they're interested in the bar space, they can potentially benefit. It just depends on what you want to do with it and stuff. So
Gotcha. So your consulting, you specifically focus on, I guess, getting into the industry, or is it helping people make great drinks?
great question. So, I think it's a little bit of both. The My expertise is training people, and the reason why I say that is I think I had the opportunity to have been trained by the best people in the business. Have you ever heard of the cocktail, the penicillin or the paper plane?
No.
That's okay. I'm sure some of your viewers may have, but there's a guy that invented the penicillin and paper plane, modern classics. His name is Sam Ross. He actually last year in 2022, he and his partner owned the number one bar in North America, and their bar has never failed to make the top 50 in the world since its conception in 2012. So they just had
Wow.
their 10-year anniversary. That was my main bar mentor the last 7 years. I've learned from a guy named James Sarah, Eric Books in the Bay Area, and they kind of really taught me. And because of their teaching and mentorship, not just behind the bar, but in life, and like learning how to save money and put money away to invest in my retirement, because obviously I don't think any bartender wants to pour until they're 65. We have to
Hmm.
kind of transition to corporate roles or consulting along the way. It was kind of the backbone to why I want to consult and train people. So my job at Wakuda is mainly training people, training the assistants on how to think regarding setting up for venue buyouts, understanding how to maintain par systems. When it comes to training bartenders on menu development, it's teaching them how to understand cost and understanding labor and things like that. And I think that taking all the different aspects what we talked about regarding making good drinks, along with all these other different facets of bar operations, that's what I think I enjoy training on the most, because from there the people I train will identify themselves. You'll find the person that wants to be a corporate mixologist, that really wants to know what's going on in the glass. Then somebody's going to really gravitate towards the idea of cost, labor, things like that, inventory, product management, and things. And that person would, in my perspective, be a good bar manager later on down the line. And they by trying to encompass as much as I can to give the team members I work with the tools to succeed. These leaders, in their own personalities and what they gravitate to, kind of show them. They eventually present themselves, and then from there, it's a lot easier to place them into, or try to open up other doors of opportunity at other places. And I think that part of consulting ultimately is just being kind of like a connector, in a sense, or a bridge between relationships, to bring people together, so that way we can add value to the community or the space that we'll be operating in.
Nice. I'll say I think you've done a great job at marketing yourself. Just listening to this podcast, you're very knowledgeable. Not just with making drinks, but just having the conversation with you today, just the industry in general. So I definitely think that if you all out there listening, and like say if you want to moonlight or be consultant, start your own career in bartending or hospitality, I would definitely say give him a holler. I don't know when you all have been listening to the whole thing, or if you just kind of like jump to this section. But if you haven't listened to the whole thing, you just ended up landing here, I would definitely recommend going back and listening to the whole interview. Now, you read a lot, and so I want to get a book off my shelf if it's here. And I'm going to turn around, and if there are any black people watching this, don't talk about the back of my head. Have you heard of this book? Twinning. Look at that.
It was actually holding the drink.
This is actually a really good book. The book that I'm holding up, everybody, is called Death & Co. Modern Classic Cocktails. Is the paper plane and the penicillin in here that you know of?
It's so that's a funny question. So Death & Company, they have a gentleman, I think he's by the name of Phil Ward, that did a lot of their cocktails in there. You'll see like the Ward 8 and stuff. Death & Company is a competing bar to my bar mentors one, and they're all good friends. Everybody in the industry is friends, from PDT, which is Please Don't Tell, which is another competing bar to Death & Company. I don't expect those to be in this book. But with that said, Death & Company actually had a huge consulting opportunity in Las Vegas, at this place called Skyfall Lounge, at the top of Mandalay Bay, I think, or across from Mandalay Bay at the Delano Tower. But they did a phenomenal job. I don't think they're so attached there anymore. So anybody going there that asks for a Death & Company drink, they might not be able to necessarily get it. But they did a huge job.
It's not in here.
Is it in there?
No, it's not in there.
A great bar though. I think they have presence in like a bunch of different states at this point.
Okay, cool. Your mentor's bar. Tell me the name of that one again.
It's Attaboy.
Attaboy. Okay, nice. And is located where?
New York, East Village, Manhattan.
Oh, I actually will be in Manhattan the first week of October.
Oh, I'll have to set you up over there. It's a small 28-seat bar. There's no signage in the front. It's actually so this bar is actually credited to be the first modern American speakeasy, just by necessity, because of the lease terms. The lease terms back in when they signed it in 1999, it was like a front and back page. Obviously it's not like that anymore. but it was basically, hey, it's 500 square feet, $800 a month. The main thing is that you cannot put signage, you cannot have crowds hanging out outside, and you cannot have noise complaints. So the owner at that time, he passed in 2015, unfortunately. His name was Sasha Petrasky, but he basically pioneered a lot of the craft cocktail stuff that like him, Del DeGraff, Audrey Saunders. I mean, there's a bunch of names that you can really go back and credit this whole craft cocktail movement to. But regarding the speakeasy style, by necessity, it kind of had to be that way. And it was a 28 seat bar. So they didn't allow standing. You had to get sat. They had somebody running the door that would only let people in as people left. And this bar doesn't have a menu. Everything is bartender's choice, based off of conversations and preference of the guest's palate. But
Nice.
you're definitely gonna have to check it out. We'll be in touch before then. I'll reach
Yeah.
out to my mentor Sam, and we'll get you set up there.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. I did want to ask you this question too before, because I know we're like talking a long time, but the robot thing at I think it's the Venetian, and I think it's at Planet Hollywood. So I had to try it out. Like I went there and I saw it the last day, and I was, just hanging around the bar before I came to Wakuda, and it was down, and I think I came to your place, and I went back right before I had to catch my Uber. What do you think about that thing?
So the funny thing is, when I went there to check it out, I'm all about checking out the new cool things in the industry and stuff. It was broken, so I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like the bartender girl that worked there on that little bar on the side, she was super cool, and she's like, yeah, I don't know, it's getting serviced, blah blah blah. I definitely think that it's cool. I think it's an experience. Even Xpot, the restaurant upstairs that does like hot pot soups at the Palazzo side of the hotel, they have robot food runners. So I definitely
Mm.
think that certain things can fill like a space in the food and beverage business and community. However, I think the biggest challenge is that there's so much obscurity and like vagueness regarding cocktails, and a lot of people um, don't necessarily, the consumer as a whole doesn't often understand in its entirety what they like. I think everybody understands what type of cereal they enjoy, what type of
Right.
noodle dishes they enjoy, whether they enjoy tomato sauce or creamy or based sauce, like things like that, seafood, chicken, poultry, or if they like blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Now with that said, when you talk about um, beverage alcohol service, a lot of people say, I don't like this, I can't stand
Right.
this. But I think what happens at some way along the line is they had an experience probably when they're under 21 without having a beverage professional correctly making drinks, asking them the right questions, showing them what balance is supposed to be. Like for my story, I didn't like gin because at 16 years old, I went to a house party and there's all this alcohol on the dining room table. My buddy's parents are out, for the weekend, and we all took shots of Bombay Sapphire
Oh,
warm,
bro.
and we're all throwing up Christmas trees the next day, right? Like so. So a lot of us swore off gin, but once I got into the bartending thing and I understood how to balance a drink and make a correct cocktail, all of a sudden things became enjoyable. And I think that's the whole idea of robot bartenders, unless the person creating that knows how to set the questions for the consumer to go through so that it filters out the balance that they're looking for.
Mm.
I think that it's going to be very challenging for a consumer to get exactly what they want out of that sort of experience. I don't think that it's bad. I don't think that it's going to go away. I think that if anything, it's probably going to grow with the
Mm-hmm.
AI and that type of movement. And I think that the programmers that make these things, and the software and the questions, or however they choose the drinks, will eventually get better as they partner with bartenders and beverage professionals. But it's gonna be more for, I would say, um, concession stands, things like
Yeah.
that. where you have the space in a big place to do something like that, to minimize the cost of staffing, to use more large format, which is like the handles, the 1.75 liter things that go through electronic bar guns, because that's more space efficient. Whereas a bartender can't possibly, for 8 hours a shift, be using these large bottles and picking them up all day. That's why we use smaller ones, for instance. So there's going to be a way for those types of technologies, I think, to find its place. But regarding high-end beverage experience, it's people don't want to think and make huge decisions when they're going out to relax and have a nice night out, to enjoy company of friends and family or other guests that they're hanging out with. That's where the bartender's job comes in, as a hospitality professional, to go and ask them one or two quick questions to get to the right drink and knock it out of the park the first time, rather than having a robot or an iPad where every single person has to try to be like, oh, what do I like? Do I like spirit forward direct? Do I like refreshing? Do I like low EBV? Do I want spritzy? What does this all mean? That's my job to go and figure that out for them, just by asking them something real quick. They didn't even need the menu in that sense, right?
Yeah. And I'm the person behind them, like, hurry up, I just want to get my Long Island iced tea.
Hey, Long Island is good if you make the drink correctly, to the correct specifications. I think it's probably one of the most underlooked at drinks. Like it's underrepresented, and I think it's not necessarily because of Long Island. It's because of the Tokyo tea, which is like the Midori version of the Long Island. Instead of using Coke, you throw that on, or the AMF, where you take the Coke out and you just throw the blue curacao on it. They have all these different LA water, whatever, all those other things out there. And oftentimes the bartenders that make it, they do a 4-bottle pickup and then throw their orange liqueur and then hit the sour mix. They're not exactly being accurate, and that's where the drink gets a bad rep because of poor execution.
Because I went this place, Luke's Kitchen in Orlando. I went, and this guy made one. And they make craft drinks, and they changed my life. And I've been drinking Long Island's for a long time, but it was so good. But they were using, I guess I don't want to say Top Chef, but
premium spirits.
Premium, yeah, okay, yeah.
Fresh ingredients, fresh citrus.
Fresh ingredients, yeah. You see all the dried up rose leaves or whatever, and they make all their orange juice and stuff like that, and they have like the dates and stuff, so like legit stuff. But I don't know. I think that's interesting, because for me, I guess if I went to a soccer game here a couple of weeks ago, and that would have been cool for me to get my drink on the run. But if I'm out, kind of like what you're saying, just having that conversation, and somebody who really know how to make drinks and how the different ingredients mix with each other. I was laughing about the Bombay Sapphire. I'm all over the place. There's just so much going on in my mind. I had the first time when I turned 21, I got Bombay Sapphire in like a couple more bottles. But I remember specifically Bombay Sapphires, and I was eating like hot chips that night, and I woke up the next morning and it was just red everywhere. That Bombay Sapphire it's not for the weak at heart. But like you say, but like you say, like if you mix it, because it's a dry gin, it's just not a regular gin, it's a dry gin. But if you mix it with the right things like pineapple, and people can like really fix it up, it's not bad. It's like you can actually make some really good drink with it, but you have to have somebody who knows what they're doing, because I was like Death Becomes Her on the floor the next morning. It was just it was crazy.
I still remember that, like throwing up Christmas trees. That's like the best way I can put it. Like all that juniper that you just think, I didn't know it was juniper. I was just like, man, like why would anybody want to drink this? Why did we do that? But then, I started studying, I started learning, and I started understanding what, it constitutes. And like, yeah, no, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. In regards to like just taking warm shots or like
yeah. And it was definitely warm shots of it. I didn't know about chilling drinks. It was just like, oh, I'm 21, let's toss these back. And that was worse than drinking. I've had shots of Everclear. People don't
Oh.
judge me when you're listening to this. Don't judge me. I had some crazy days back in college, but that was worse than drinking Everclear. Like, God, yes.
No, I get you.
But yeah, the robot thing I thought was cool, but I would definitely want to, interact with a person. And it could just be, me showing my age because, in a sense, I do think the younger generation are becoming more, I guess, is antisocial the word? They're not as, um, collaborative or social as I guess prior generations are. So they are, I think, are completely fine with a robot bringing their food out on a tray, or a robot making their drinks. It's cool. It's something they can put on Instagram and TikTok like I did. And so I would like to see how that plays out in the future with that industry. Like, would flaring become a bigger thing to attract people to the human side of it? Because like we were talking about this robot bar, it was down when I went, like I said initially, and they were giving away like 3 drinks for the price of one or something like
Yeah, yeah. They tried to do that to me too, and I was like, I just want one. That's cool. Give mine to the next person. No, they're cool though. I really like the
they
bar staff up there. Yeah, they're super cool.
yeah, and so it was kind of like it was down for like a while. Like, I think the sensor or something was messed up with it. And of course, like with all this new technology like AI in robotics, all of it is going to be, more stabilized and advanced and sophisticated. So I know it's just like kind of like those growing pains for this emerging technology. Because I don't think that they're like that plentiful around. Like, you can put all these self-checkout kiosks at Walmart and Targets and everywhere. Like, this is a very specific technology, so they're gonna have to go through a lot of growing pains, like I said before, it becomes, really refined. But I don't know. It was cool, but it's interesting just to see, because I talk about AI a lot and robotics, just specifically AI a lot, with me being in the tech industry, so to speak, and a lot of stuff that I do with CompTIA. We talked about AI and robotics today in one of our think tank meetings. But when you see it starting to affect areas like bartending and food and beverage and stuff like that, our everyday lives, and how you were talking about how AI become more sophisticated and can help predict what type of drinks a person would like. So I'm thinking that maybe they get like a little diabetic, prick, get their blood sample and get all the information and say, oh, based off of your blood type, you would like this drink. But I'm just being.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's probably on the way at some point for sure.
Yeah. Um. Any other thing you want to share with the listeners?
I mean, no, I don't have anything. I think we feel like we covered quite a bit, right?
We did.
But I mean, if there's any other questions that you got, I mean, I'm not in a rush either. I'm 100% with you on the Gen Z and what you said about how they're definitely moving towards technology. I think the um, not so much the flair being the factor to get more people towards the service side, but I think it's just the general hospitality. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
right now are in food and beverage that aren't even passionate about it, and
Mm-hmm.
they're they're creating a lot of opportunities um, to prove that it's not even service in
Mm-hmm.
some instances. And I think that as robotics and things like that becomes more available, people ultimately will pay for service and hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, like, as you're saying though, like, that's going to be um, it's gonna make a divide for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see how that goes, because that's gonna kind of redefine the role of a food server, a bartender, things like that. And it's gonna really bring things more in hospitality, and not even just like the steps of service, or the concepts of, maybe the customer is always right or whatever it is, but just the way that people feel with the interaction. I think that's kind of what's gonna be more important later on down the line as things progress. There's a lot of guys out there that I go to, the local bar, and you're not even sure why they're there. Like they ignore you, they don't like you, they
Right.
what do you want, and stuff. So
It's like, dang, I gotta wait 10 minutes before you walk down here to take my
yeah, and
order.
in
I
that
know you
case I
saw
would
my
have been
hand.
better with the robot.
Right, exactly. With the people standing in line trying to figure out all the things that they like and don't like, But
Yeah.
I do think that it will be a breaking point or a shift. And I tell people this when I have conversations a lot more so with my family and friends. But I think in the future, the cool thing is going to be um, is to be an authentic human. So to have this authentic human, because I think that people are so fake and superficial with social media, with all the body modifications. Like I hear about the people breaking their legs to become taller, and just like with guys with the fake chest and abs, and we already know what a lot
Yeah.
of the ladies are doing, and have been doing for a while. But I think it's just going to be a cool thing to just be a born human and just accepting yourself and people for how they were when they're born. So like I look at a lot of those. I don't even say I look at a lot of those, but when I look at women now when they put on makeup, it seems like everybody has the same face because they're doing all this contour. I think it's a contour makeup, but like so my nose is kind
Yeah.
of big, but it seems like their nose is all small and like and so and everybody starts to look the same because their eyebrows are all like this perfect shaped eyebrow, and it is really enhancing their natural features. Is more so giving them a totally different look. So I think that originality and being connected to other people is going to be a thing because I think is so much of this antisocial, aspects of humanity that we can take as people because we're social beings, and so being separated and disconnected from others, I think, is gonna take a toll. And that's getting all off into this philosophical topic that has
No,
nothing
no,
to do with you.
I agree. I 100% agree with you. Like I think the idea of like, being your authentic self and stuff, like that's the person that's their authentic self and is happy and accepts themselves that way and doesn't have the insecurities, that takes care of their mental health in a way that they can feel
Hmm.
happy being their authentic self. A lot of people are going to envy that, and then I'm hoping that as society moves forward and stuff, that that when when you have that authentic person that's a certain way, right now, and I'm not trying to generalize in a negative way, but there's a lot of people out there that for whatever reason, maybe they're hurting in their own life, maybe they're not happy with themselves and they're not happy with their authentic selves, that they see somebody that's authentic, that's happy, and they're often to jump to a conclusion like, oh, this must be going on with him, or there's got to be something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm hoping to see the societal shift, of what you're seeing, people being more authentic in that sense, to where people can just be happier for each other and happier for themselves, instead of always just trying to conform with the latest trends of looks
Hmm.
and makeup, or the things that society is currently telling them that they have to be.
Right.
I definitely believe in self-improvement, self-development, and I was trying to become the best version of yourself, but I think that there's a cap on the cost in which you as a human being should be willing to pay, and you should never go past that, because the moment I think you go past whatever that cap is for yourself, you start becoming unhealthy, you start thinking unhealthily, you start suffering, and the people around starts feeling that, your relationships start feeling that, and then ultimately your enjoyment of your own life, I think starts taking a toll. And I think too many people not enjoy their life, ultimately kind of gets to that point where society starts crumbling down. And
Hmm.
I'm hoping
Yeah.
that as people become more authentic and start being happy and glorifying that in a sense, like you're saying, hopefully that things start shifting in
Yeah.
a positive way.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Hopefully. I do want to ask you. I do want to do
Yeah.
some this or that with you. I'm gonna do this or that Vegas edition. I didn't pull up any questions, but um, so the first this or that is gonna be the MGM. Was it the Dome or the Globe?
Oh, MSG Sphere, Madison Square Garden
Sphere. Okay,
Sphere. Yeah.
I was all the way off. That or the NASCAR down down through. Is it NASCAR?
Yeah. The Formula One.
Formula One. So
Formula One.
which
Yeah.
one? Which one do you pick?
Uh, I'm 100% more for the MSG Sphere because of what I believe it's going to do for the city, where there's so much controversy regarding like the politics surrounding F1 and
Mm,
how it's affected people, the not just the guests of Las Vegas, but it's created traffic to the extent where some people take 2 to 3 hours just to get to the strip on what would normally be a 15 to 20 minute drive. And to
wow.
leave the strip, it's another hour to hour and a half. As you know, later in the evening, whereas the MC Sphere did create some challenges, but at the end of the day, it's very clear what they're bringing in terms of venue space, meeting space.
Hmm.
The cost that it's going to be associated with it, versus the cost that's being associated in a sense to like the taxpayers, because I think F1 is only covering a certain degree of the costs
Uh,
for paving, and yes, they're bringing in humongous amounts of money, but the stipulations that are being pressed on the strip facing businesses to pay F1 for view of the strip, and the impediment of traffic over the last months leading up to it. I think that a lot of us, I speak generally speaking for a lot of us, definitely think that the Sphere is a nicer amenity to Las
mm,
Vegas. It's year around, whereas a lot of the stuff we're going through on a day to day basis is for one weekend in that sense.
okay. Yeah, I know when I came to the Venetian, they were giving us all these crazy directions on how to get to the entrance. I was like, look, I'm just gonna tell my Uber driver this is where I need to be. But the traffic was so bad. I think it took us maybe like an additional 30 minutes to get, because he had to like turn here and go there, and people were trying to make light, so they're halfway in the road when they should have just stopped back at behind the light, and it was just madness. Um,
Yeah.
so I could see that, but he was saying, I think because they had to redo the roads to take the impact of the cars with the, I guess, the engines and all that, the force that the cars are going to exert on the road, that it would disrupt the traditional road. I don't even know how that's going to work. Like F1 through the strip, like, and maybe I'm thinking like F1, is it just like a drag thing? And maybe I need to look up F1 because I don't really know. Is it a straight line, or are they going through like
No,
through the
it's a
city?
track. It's gonna be a
That's what I
track
thought.
going, yeah, yeah, it's crazy. They're saying 200-mile-an-hour cars. You know those little Formula pole position, that arcade game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like those cars that go like 200 miles an hour, but they're literally only like an inch off the ground or something like that. So like the streets have to be incredibly flat, otherwise they're gonna scrape and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think we're all excited for the event, but the amount of trouble it's created, for families, like you have mother and father that work on the strip, they can't even get their kids out of school and home on time before their shift
Hmm.
starts. Like, so this I mean, ultimately, it's growth for the city. So I definitely
Hmm.
think it's cool. I want to see those cars rip around that turn, especially in front of the Venetian and Palazzo. That's probably the best corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll have to see. Like,
That's interesting. Okay. Drink question: darks or light?
ooh,
Clear or dark? I'm sorry. I'm saying dark or lights.
uh,
Clear.
clear or dark. So regarding spirits, um, to be very honest, I drink beer and wine, but for purposes of answering the question, I would go with light spirits, just because not because I enjoy drinking them myself, but I know that more people enjoy, or it's a more approachable spirit category. So if I had to pick and choose one, like it was that's it. I'd rather have that because I can entertain and provide more to the general community. with light spirits over the dark.
Let me ask you about that. Is the preference based off of, I guess, the distilling process? Because I'm definitely a clear person.
That's a good question. So, when you think of distillation process, distillation essentially is the separation of alcohol from whether it's a beer or a wine mix, and basically all of it comes out clear until you put it into oak barrels to age, and essentially
Mm,
the wood is what gives it the coloration, unless you use caramel coloring, which is kind of not really like a high quality way to get something to look colored. With that said, um, just kind of with that said, more people gravitate towards refreshing and easier drinkability. And when you think of gin or vodka, it's light and aromatic on the gin side. Vodka is designed to be tasteless, colorless, and odorless. So when you mix that down with like lemon or lime juice and a little bit of sugar, it's something that nobody will ever really have a problem with. Nobody's going to be like,
gotcha.
there's a flavor here that I really dislike. Whereas when you have aged spirits, depending on the barrel, whether it's American oak, Mizunara, Japanese oak, or French oak, they lend different types of flavors. And if the barrel held sherry before you use the barrel, or use bourbon, and then you're putting something else in there, that's going to also impart flavors that the I guess the easiest way to put it is, the more flavors or complexity that you can put into a spirit through like an aging process and things like that, the more things that there's for a person to say no to, in
Mm,
term even with
gotcha.
a cocktail. You have 11 ingredients in a cocktail that balance is just perfect. If somebody looks at that cocktail, there's 11 opportunities for them to say, I like the idea of this, but I don't like that one ingredient. Can you take it out? And that one ingredient, taking it out, might unbalance the entire drink based off of how it's created. So sometimes, in a sense, less is more, and that's kind of what I would base my response on.
You know what? I never thought about people ordering a cocktail like a hamburger. Like, take this out of my drink. I just like,
Yeah.
okay, give me that, and I drink it, and that's the end of the story. Like, I might take a long time to drink it, but if I don't like it, but I never thought about that. That's interesting. But I guess, doing the job for so long, and especially working somewhere like in Vegas, you've probably seen it all. Um, okay, so, oh, I wanted to ask too, why is it that the dark spirits are considered more of sipping spirits than the clears? Because I always hear
That's a
people about, the whiskeys and bourbons, and it's just like you're shooting or mixing the clears.
no super great question, actually. So the reason why I believe that it's looked at that way is because most typically, uh the brown or the darker color spirits, they're going to be aged in oak barrels. There's when it's aged, like tequila reposados are probably one of your least aged, but the proximity of where it lies in regards to the equator and the heat, the climate, allows it to extract a lot of oak faster in a warmer climate, because of the contract of the liquid going in and out of the oak with the change of temperature and the
Hmm.
heat. So with that said, it gets a lot more oak influence. Now, generally speaking, for bourbons, scotches, especially cognacs that are aged in colder cellars, um, it's gonna be in this barrel for a long period of time. Now, if you think of like, here, let me take a quick sip. Okay, if you think of like the barrel, and it's filled all the way to the top. Didn't want to spill on myself, of course, but over time, there's this thing called the angel's share, in which alcohol and water can basically evaporate through the grains of the wood. So what replaces the liquid is air. So over years of aging, that air in there creates oxidation, and oxidation mellows out the spirit just a little bit, kind of like the
Hmm.
same way that when you have an older wine, it kind of opens up through using a decanter or letting it breathe for a little while. The spirit over the years with the oxidation starts to mellow out. Now, with that said, the oak aging also lends different flavors, whether it's from a sherry cask or an ex bourbon cask. There's going to be like vanillas, notes of cedar, candlewood, sometimes red fruits from the sherry, depending what it might be. But when you think about the concept of aging a spirit, it's taking a space in a property. It takes real estate to age it, so therefore there's a cost to age it because it takes that space for years and years and years. Whereas a clear spirit like vodka or gin that just goes through a distillation and infusion process, it doesn't have to age, so it can go straight into the bottle essentially and go to market. And so it's typically often going to be and I say often very loosely because there's cheap aged spirits as well, but your most expensive aged spirits are going to be very particularly blended. There'll be single barrels depending on what style of spirit it is, but that time that it takes to get that mellowness, to get that smoothness, the real estate cost that it occupies through that process, it increases the price point oftentimes. So, and it also increases the complexity with the age, of course. So therefore it's something that people want to savor more than to mix down with clear spirits. Nobody feels bad mixing a gin down unless it's like a super premium that's not made. Like there's certain old Nolet distillery gin that maybe it was made back in like the 70s or whatever that you can't get anymore, and it was made very particularly, so it's a pricier one. You'll probably drink that in a martini or just by itself on a big block of ice, and that might command a price point that suggests that you just kind of sip it. Now, of course, everybody has their own preferences. Some people sip vodka, and I think that's vodka neat is a little bit extreme, and that's cool.
That's
to each
crazy.
their own, but some people do it. So there's a degree of preference. So I don't want any of the viewers or listeners to think that there's a right or wrong way to do it. But
I'm going to tell you,
typically
if you
speaking,
all are sipping vodka, we might need to send an evaluation out.
well, yeah, generally speaking, that would be my my understanding of why your darker or aged spirits are typically more considered sipping spirits.
Yeah, that's what's up. That makes sense. I'm just kidding about the vodka thing because I think maybe I think in Russia, like that might be a big thing because vodka is big in Russia. So I would assume that they would sip vodka there, that they would have some very high end vodkas and sip it there. But I don't know. In America, again, that's something that I've never heard of until like just now somebody sipping vodka. Because like you said, I've always heard vodka is like tasteless, odorless, like whatever, all those things, and it is typically used to mix drinks. So yeah, like that just kind of like blew my mind. I was like, what kind of
well, there's to be fair, not just like Russia, but in Korea they do soju, which is not too far off from vodka. I don't want to say it's the same. In Japan, there's shochu, which is a single distilled spirit that I think there's like 53 different things you can distill it legally from. A lot of them have a lot more complexity than others, but essentially they'll just put it on the rocks and they'll just drink it like that alongside of a meal. And I think in Japan, like don't quote me on it, it's more commonly drank shochu with meals than is sake, which oftentimes has very nice degrees of complexity. So there's single distilled or double distilled products that are clear spirits out there that people drink in the simplest sipping process, unadulterated in that sense too. So like yeah. I don't want to be unfair to him.
That's a perfect segue because I did want to ask you about sake. Like, I guess based off of that is more of a like a vodka.
Great question. So, sake is actually going to be closer to beer, and there's people that I'm very well acquainted with that are experts regarding the world of sake. So I definitely don't want to speak too far into it in case they hear me and be like, text me after, hey, dude, what are you talking about? Like, but no, sake is actually fermented from rice.
Rice. Yeah.
A lot of people think it's close to a wine, but it's actually closer to a beer. They call sake, the makers of sake in Japan, sake breweries. But they're very particular rice strains. There's a lot of different approved strains of rice that grow very particular in different regions. That some grow better in like behind a hill because of their longer, taller, heavier grain, so they get knocked over by the wind easily. But they ferment a different way. The polishing rate, sake essentially, what they'll do is they'll take the rice grain and they'll mill it down and polish off the proteins on the outside, so you're left with what they call the shinpaku, or the I hope I'm saying that right, but the center of the rice grain, which is the starches that they can ferment, so it gives it a more clean flavor profile. Sake, although it's just coming from rice, can often pull flavors of like floral notes. You can pull a lot of fruit forward notes, melons and things like that. And then you can even find earthiness, umami, minerality out of sake. And it just comes down to the brewer's technique, the strain of rice that they use, and the water source that they ferment with. So there's a lot of different complexities and things about sake that I really probably, as a beverage professional, know more. But sake is delicious. I think everybody should
Yeah.
kind of taste it. But if they go ahead and taste it, I highly suggest tasting it at a Japanese restaurant, a nice Japanese restaurant that's a traditional style, so that the sommelier or the sake expert that works there, and most of the servers are very well versed, especially at like the restaurant that I work in sake education, so they can very much pair the food to appropriate sake, or they can offer you oftentimes a flight that shows maybe the same degree of milling or polishing of the rice,
Mm-hmm.
but somehow or another, through the brewer's technique and the location or prefecture in which it came from, the flavors pull floral on the first one, maybe fruity on the second one, and then earthy on the third one. So you can see the different styles of sake and kind of get a better approach. I think it's kind of like how we talked about that warm shot of gin when we're younger and stuff, in that sense. You want to approach any sort of new type of beverage, sake including, with a professional in front of you, so that they can guide your tasting, so that way it can be as enjoyable as possible, and so that way you know what you're enjoying, so that way the next time you go out as a consumer, you're educated, or have a strong idea on what you like, so that you can order it again, or at least give the descriptors of what you like to the server or the bartender, so they can make the best educated guess on pairing something for you, so you get the best value and experience when you're enjoying yourself out.
Nice. That's good stuff. Like really good information. I've tried sake several times, and I do enjoy it. But I do remember like reading up on it some, and finding out that it was made from rice, which I found interesting. I don't think a lot of people know that. It's I don't know. I guess that's probably something most Americans don't really. What do you think about is there a stigma behind that with Americans? Like, is it more people who are willing to try different things, or connoisseurs of spirits, or like what type of people in would try that? And just for people living in small towns like me, because I think I might have tried it the first time in Orlando. But if somebody's in a small little rural town or city like where I'm originally from, how would you suggest them getting access to sake? Like, is it sold typically at liquor stores, or is it at specialty liquor stores? Talking like I'm drunk now.
I think it's more often going to be sold at more specialty liquor stores. And the reason why I say that is there's very cheap sake, and then
Hmm.
there's definitely very expensive sake. Like we sell bottles of sake that go above $500
Oh
for the
wow.
bottle. Um, on the bar top, at the restaurant, I have regulars that come in by themselves to basically enjoy just sake. But that's very specialized, of course, right? When you think of going to the store to buy sake, I only go to places like a Japanese market that's a big Japanese market that specializes in that type of product, or I'm gonna go to like a Total Wines, a Bevmo, or like some sort of larger scaled liquor store that will likely carry that. But even then, so in like a smaller town, if you don't have traditional Japanese restaurants that operate, you know, on a relatively high end to command a price point for high quality sake, I
Hmm.
think it's going to be challenging to find, because I don't think it's too often that you'll find like you know, $300 bottle of sake when the average dish in the restaurant's only like, you know, $14 to $20.
Yeah.
Um, it just sits there, and sake, considering that it's you know, it's brewed, it's a fermented beverage. Um, I Now this one, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think most sakes are meant to be aged. I think they're
Mm,
meant to be drank rather young. So it's in the liquor store's best interest to make sure that whatever they bring in, they're able to move, or that if they're gonna not be able to move it, that they don't lose too much money on the
hmm.
cost of having it, of course.
Mm,
And on the business side, if you're putting a bunch of sakes there, that's not going to move because you don't have a clientele in that area or demographic that's asking for it. That's taking up real estate or shelving space that they could put something that would move, right?
mm,
So I do think it's very much a business transaction on whether a store keeps it or not. But any major city, like I know you mentioned, like you're talking about Chicago, large cities in Texas. I mean, there's Dallas is. I heard they have some really amazing food and beverage scene out there. I'm certain that you could find a nice traditional Japanese restaurant that will have a nice sake selection. They will have servers, sommeliers, and bartenders, restaurant management that's highly trained in sake. And if they find that there's a demand for it and they're not trained, they're going to be able to get access to the distributors and the brand reps that have all the training materials, and they'll come out and educate and taste the staff. So for any time that there's like a demand for a product in a market that, you know, it currently doesn't have it, there's always going to be a distributor that's going to want to fill that gap. You know, like beverage and food and beverage, if you think about it as a whole, restaurants and stuff is a social activity.
hmm.
Anything that people can enjoy together or create a cool fun experience, I think it's in the best interest of most you know, food and beverage professionals to be able to offer. So
Yeah.
if it's not available where you're at just yet, I think it's just a matter of time as the town and the city grows, and as different culinary concepts move in and stuff. But a
Okay.
long answer to a simple question.
No, it's good
But
stuff. Another good transition with the beer versus the spirit. Brandy. Is it a wine or is it a spirit? Because I've been reading online and I couldn't come up with a definitive conclusion.
no, that's you said all the right things right there. So brandy is a spirit that's made from wine, whereas whiskey is a spirit made from grains like beer.
Mm,
So whiskey is essentially made from beer, whether it's barley, whether it's rice, whether it's rye, corn, wheat. They take those grains, turn it into like a beer of sort. They call it a wort, and then they ferment that. I'm sorry, then they distill that mixture to get new make spirit. That is unaged and clear, and then they'll go and put it into the barrel. Once it touches the barrel for a degree of time, then it's considered a whiskey. Same with brandy. It starts from a wine, and brandy can be made from any sort of fruit product, essentially. Most commonly grapes. And what they'll do is they'll take the grapes, they'll ferment it into a wine or the fruit, and then they'll distill that to remove the alcohol from the mixture, from the water essentially, and then they'll go and put that into an oak barrel of sorts to make a brandy or cognac. There is the clear spirit brandy, which falls under what they call eau de vie, water of life, and that's I'm trying to think. What's that one called? I can't remember. There's a bunch of different Eastern European countries, Czech Republic, that do like plum brandies that are
Mm.
unaged. They're hot on the palate. They're usually high proof, over 100 proof. And those ones are meant to be drank that way. Like there's cherry brandies as well. Calvados is an apple brandy that's aged. So there's, well, I guess some of them might be unaged as well too. But yeah, essentially brandy is going to be from fruit, most commonly grapes, and then cognacs are typically your French style from the cognac region. That's your Hennessy, Courvoisier, Remy Martin, Martell, your Louis the 13th and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I love brandies, especially those really nicely aged ones, because brandies, especially the cognacs from France, they're aged in cellars, typically underground, cold cellars. So they last a long time in the barrels. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be quoted on it. Because they're distilled from grapes, in that region, the grapes retain a pretty good degree of acidity through the distillation process, and that acidity helps it to age longer in the barrel. So you're talking things like Remy Martin, Louis the 13th. The youngest brandy in that, or eau de vie as they call it, is 60 years old, with some of them being old as 120. They'll take about 1,200 different brandies, and blend it all together to make that bottle of Louis the 13th. So the complexities that you get on that stuff it's amazing. I think it's one of the finer spirits for sure.
Wow.
But sorry, again, another long answer.
No, it's like so much good information, and then I keep like coming up with more questions. And I'm thinking like, man, I think I went from talking to a bartender to like a person who owns a business, like what is it? What is it that the people who make the liquors called? What is that thing called?
Oh,
Distillery.
distillers.
Yeah. So he knows so much. So no, because I'm just over here like, wow, like 120 years I would have. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a 3-generation product. The guys making it today is making it for 3 generations out. They'll never have the chance to taste it.
That is crazy. That is crazy. Wow. I guess I feel like I've been trying to wrap up 3 times already, and I keep coming up with more questions. Like I was like, oh shit.
It's all good.
No,
I enjoy it. I learn all this kind of stuff because I think that the bartending position is a hospitality position. There's guests on the bar that they're often out there with friends, often want to, maybe they're having a date, they want to impress, whatever it might be. And if somebody's gonna be humble enough to ask a question on the bar top, I want to have the best possible answer for them, so that not so much so that they see me as like an authority in the space or anything, but to add value to their overall experience, so that they understand why they enjoy what they enjoy, so that no matter where they go after the fact, they can order it again, or they can go to the store and the big liquor store and figure out what it is that they're gonna enjoy, so that they can, like, if you're gonna drink or eat, why not do it better, right? Like,
yeah.
so like I just feel it's my job to be able to speak and bridge that gap from the consumer to the product. Like that's just the job.
I'm gonna tell you, you are an expert at that, because you sold the hell out of that water at Wakuda, the house water that you all had. Like I didn't even get anywhere, because typically when I drink, I don't even like drink water. And he kept going on about the water, and he was explaining it to the people. I was like, well, damn, I gotta get some of this water before I leave. I was like, it's free, so.
Was it the carbonated one or the still?
I think it was a carbonated, because you're talking about the whole process, and they have some type of machine or something in the back.
Oh, yeah.
The people had a friend come up, and it was like, oh, you gotta try this water. And I'm just looking out here like, damn.
I think I was training somebody that day. Because I was kind of all over just talking to one of the guys behind the bar most of the time, right? Like, I feel like I was training somebody that day.
Asian guy, I don't remember his name, because he was a little taller than you, and it was a lady with long blonde hair and a ponytail, I think. But I came in right when you all opened, because again, I had checked out and I was waiting, so I really didn't know if people were coming in on their shift. But I get this other guy that made me a drink. Speaking of that, you all suggested a drink with sake in it, and it was actually really good. Um, but yeah, that water, like I don't remember anything else besides that. Like that water, it was good. The water was good. Like it was, filtered in everything really good or distilled. I don't know which one it was, but the water was good. But like you were telling the whole process, and I was like, I've got to try this water before I leave Vegas because I was not going to get it, and they were just like drinking pitcher after pitcher of the water. And I was like, Jesus Christ,
Oh
they need
yeah,
to pay for this
that's
water.
no, I think so for like the your viewers and listeners, it comes out of this it comes out of a $25,000 machine that essentially it's close to the effervescence of champagne. We call it crunchy water at the restaurant because like if you bring the glass up, you can hear the bubbles just kind of like crunching away in that sense. But the water, of course, it is filtered. The state has their things for the filtration. Then of course the hotel has their filtration system, and then the restaurant has the filtration system within the machine. So it's a highly filtered water. But that machine carbonates it to such a crazy rate, and within that machine as well, there's a space to put a bottle of whiskey, essentially to do the whiskey highball in the Japanese style. So it's like super effervescent, crystal clear ice spear in there, so that way it looks like there's nothing in the glass really, but it's just highly carbonated. They say that it's about 2 times more carbonated than Fever Tree, just shy of champagne. And champagne is
Wow.
going to be your most carbonated sparkling wine in most instances because of the time that they allow the wine to age in the bottle, making sure that the carbonation that happens in the bottle has a lot of time to dissolve into the solution. So the bubbles in champagne, that's why they're so much smaller, and that's why they feel so different comparing to proseccos and soda out of a can or a gun.
Mm, interesting. There you have it, people. Like
Yeah.
he just sold you on water. Like this is an the expert. This is why he's getting the new title of the mix master because for somebody to explain water, I was like, yeah, it goes through my Brita picture. They got some sand and rocks in there, and it makes it taste good. And no, don't take that the wrong way. I don't know what Brita has in their filters. Is I don't think it's sand and rocks though, but it's some type of crunchy things in there.
Brita's cool. I like Brita too.
Brita's cool. It's not as good as your water, but it's it's good. I was like, dang, I thought I was bougie with my Fiji water, and they're just going on about this water. But yeah, so that's what's up. Um, I do want to go back to this and say I think that you gave some really good advice about people, just getting in around. I think you were talking about your consulting business or something, but you were saying how people can get into bartending to help them get into other industries. And so they brought up something we talked about today. We had an organization called Break the Paper Ceiling, and they had mentioned this origin job, and then you have your gateway job, and it leads to your destination job. And so what you just said made me thought about that, like that bartending position can be a gateway position. Another thing about that too um, is I met a lot of people at bars. You know how you hear people say, "Oh, I made this deal on the golf course." I feel like the bar is underrated. I feel like a lot of people network at bars and make deals or connections at bars because that's definitely been my case in a lot of instances, meeting a lot of cool people, especially at conferences and stuff. Everybody's at least in Vegas, everybody's like, "Oh, let's go drink, let's go." To check this bar or place out, and there's a lot of collaboration and talking going around that bar. So,
No, yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's possibly a transition before the golf course, but it opens up
mm,
the ability to bridge that, instead of having to maybe book through somebody else's secretary or whatever. You're at the convention. You're already bumping elbows with these
hmm
other people that you want to do business with, and a lot of times in these conferences, what I notice is the executives and the people out there, they're swiping their corporate card. A lot of things they're expensing it as part of the doing business. And there's there's definitely an ability to go and do that, especially oh, you haven't tried Pappy Van Winkle, you haven't tried this cognac, you haven't tried this. Well, let's get one. They'll swipe away. They'll have the cigar gal from Davidoff come by. They'll be enjoying a cigar and a glass of something nice, and chit chat a little bit about whatever it is that's the topic of conversation. And I definitely just being behind the bar have overheard things like that, exactly what you're saying and stuff. So I think especially in Vegas, like you said, the conference scene can be very, very productive for business attendees and stuff.
And okay, I promise this is going to be my last question, but I mentioned this before the show. Okay, I lied that quick. I'm going to ask you two more questions. The first one is there a way that someone can tell if someone's manipulated their drinks?
Oh, yes. If it doesn't taste correct. So I've actually personally dealt with that myself. So when I was a lead of the bar program previous to my current job, I probably shouldn't say the business names just for any
you don't have to
defamation things, but we'll just say that my mentor had me make a bunch of different cocktails for the menu, right? And I did a lot of the training for the bartenders, and we had a lot of great talent. There's a lot of them moved on. There's a couple of them still left within that business that stayed along, but a lot of the people that they brought on don't have the same degree of training for the reasons we talked previously on how people are hired and how that happens anyways. But the drinks that I put on the menu, I'll have guests come into the restaurant, finding me in the restaurant and mention that drinks that they previously enjoyed with me that maybe I created the recipe for, or I know my mentor created the recipe for. I know exactly how it's supposed to taste, and we've always served it that way. All of a sudden, these people are coming in saying that it tastes different, or they're putting this inside a different product altogether that might not even be the same type of base brand. It's one thing to go from this bourbon to that bourbon, but it's another thing to take the bourbon out completely and then throw gin in, but yet still try to call it the same. It's like trying to take like a pizza, get rid of the whole pie, throw noodles, but throw all the toppings on the stuff and say, oh no, this is still the same pizza we've always been serving. Right? Like obviously that's not the case. So in terms of manipulating the drinks, it's a very, very common problem. Most commonly on the if it's not intentional by the new operator who's heading the program that's changing the specifications or the measurements of the actual drinks, it's a lack of training to where the people pouring the drinks doesn't exactly know what it's supposed to be or how to do it accurately, or it could be down to the quality of the product going in. And what I typically mean by that is if we've always pressed citrus juice like lemon and lime fresh the day of, some places, and I'm not saying that this is happening to the drinks that I've seen change that I've made, but some places will change their standard and say it's okay to have it overnight to the next day, or even 2 days, 3 days, or whatever it might be. And when it comes to oxidation, shelf life without preservatives, things, especially flavor, changes quite quickly. Maybe it's not necessarily at a point of deterioration in terms of it's going to make you sick, but it's going to make the flavor of the drink taste vastly different. So there's a multiple ways that things like that can happen, especially in the beverage community, for sure.
Interesting. Now, speaking of that, are there any things like you can give tips on around drink safety? So we hear about a lot of the things that happen in like college situations, roofies and stuff like that. Are there things that people can watch out for, or is it just kind of don't leave your drink? It's just the golden rule.
Um, that's that's a really good question. So generally speaking, for women get roofied more than men. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that's the statistic. With
Mm-hmm.
that said, most commonly speaking, if that happens, they start feeling ill and they're found in the bathroom stall passed out on the ground. In that case, obviously there is health things that could be come up because of whatever the intoxicant was that made them feel that way. That could be bad for them, whether it's just for a couple of days while they feel sick or long term.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, the danger of getting drugged and then taken advantage of. I definitely think that when women go out, they should be smart about where they go. They should be going to a place where the staff is responsible as a whole, where they feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
that the people actually care. They should be going with friends. They should not be going by themselves, assuming that they're gonna make friends. They might make the wrong ones,
Mm-hmm.
as the topic is what we're talking about. Now, with that said, in terms of what you can do in the moment, because that was all kind of stuff leading up to being, to be
Right.
choosing the right places to go to. Things that you can do to be safe is when you're holding your drink, hold it in a way where your hand is relatively over the top if
Oh.
you're not sipping it. What I mean by that is even this drink that's kind of dead, you can hold it over the top like this and make it a little bit more difficult. Um,
Mm.
if you put your drink down on the bar, you make sure that it's not in an angle that you can't see very well, that it's on the bar, and you might be facing sideways talking to somebody, but make sure that it's in front of you, that if somebody tried to do something to your drink, you would see it. The most common thing that I hear about happening regarding drinking a drink that's been adulterated in that sort of way is because guys, and I'm not trying to make us guys sound bad or anything. I'm just talking statistically speaking and based off of what I've heard and seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if somebody's gonna do that, they're gonna do that in a drink that they can easily slip something into. So they're gonna order you a drink around a shots that's mixed down that you won't be able to see the whatever is dissolving in there. You won't typically be able to taste it because there's different elements happening, like citrus juices. It's gonna be super hot because it's a shot of 151 or whatever it might be, but they're gonna order it from the bartender. After the bartender gives it to them, they're gonna put something in it and then pass it off to the
Mm.
people that they're doing that to. So if you're accepting a drink from somebody else, you're best to accept it straight from the bartender or watch the bartender put it on the bar and have your eyes on it through that process,
Mm-hmm.
in that sense. But most of the time, people will order the drink, they'll get the drink, and as they're passing the drink, that's when something happens to it. Because bartenders are, at least in my experiences with the people that I've always worked with, there's a high degree of integrity and safety for our guests. We want people to have a fun time, but we want them to be safe as well. We the staff is not the people that's going to be doing that to y'all for the
Right.
most
Right.
to the consumer. Um, at least I've never seen that on my end. And if you're going to a place that the staff is doing that, it's probably recognizable that it's something that would happen there. And
Mm-hmm.
then people have to use their better judgment to protect themselves by just not putting themselves in that sort of risk.
Yeah. That's all that is really great, and I think something really simple that you said, as far as putting your hand over like the top of your drink, holding it that way. That just kind of blew my mind because it's something so simple that you can do, but I don't think a lot of people think about because it's kind of like a lid over, you know, your drink, kind of like a takeout
Yeah.
lid or
Or
something.
hold it a little bit higher, like in between sips, keep it here. Don't
Yeah.
hold it so low that it's out of your line of sight that
Hmm.
somebody could just plop something into your drink. If it's right here, you would notice.
Right.
I take a sip and then I'll hold it right here while I'm talking, whatever it might be, and I can see what's happening right here through my peripherals, even as I'm having eye contact and holding a conversation. But yeah, there's definitely physical ways that a consumer can go and protect themselves from those sort of situations.
So two things you two words I wanted to just get clarification on. So you say if a drink is mixed down, like the guy will order, I'm just gonna say a person will order a drink and is mixed down. So mixed down, do you mean it has like a lot of different ingredients mixed into it?
Yeah, so I mean, I've never typically been like drugged myself or anything like that, but um I would assume that most things going into a a drink like that, if you think of like just regular prescriptions kind of stuff, if you're to chew something down, for the most part, it typically most stuff would have like a more bitter taste to it.
Mm,
Um, so you need to have a drink that's gonna hide that visually as well as flavor wise. Um, Granted that if it's a shot, people may not necessarily even notice it. They're just gonna be like, "Oh, that one wasn't that good."
yeah.
Um, but if it was in like a glass of champagne, like a nice flute, and someone was to try to drop something into it, it's probably gonna be a little bit more obvious, just
Hmm.
visually speaking. So it's I would suggest that it's more common that it's going to be in something that's going to hide it visually as well as on the flavor side as well.
That's interesting because so for me, I never thought about a roofie being like a pill or anything. I always thought it's just something that they pour over, but I guess it could be either or, huh?
I personally am not too sure, but I'd assume that if it was in a solid form, that it'd have to be crushed up,
Hmm.
so that way it would dissolve and things like that. I
Right.
don't know if it would be in a liquid form or not,
Oh,
dissolve down like that, but I personally, I mean, I don't know
right.
anybody
That's not
that
your.
would do that personally to somebody else. I know it happens out there, and I always just when my girlfriend goes out with her friends, I just make sure that they see her leave, for instance, or she's just safe getting home if I'm not
Hmm.
there. But ultimately, I do know where she's going to be. She knows where I'm going to be, and I know the friends that she's with. She knows the friends that I'm going to be with, and we just try to do as much risk mitigation up front as we possibly
Right.
can, and just go to safe places. Generally speaking.
Cool. The second was hot on the tongue. That means just like giving you a burning sensation, right? Like
Yeah,
Everclear.
yeah. Hot as in like undiluted ethanol, like hotter in proof. Yeah, yeah,
151.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so is there any advice that you would give to someone who's trying to get into a career as a bartender?
Yeah, absolutely. I think um getting into it, it's hard in a sense where you'd have to prove yourself in the restaurant to be given a chance behind the bar because of the degree of prestige that a bar has in the restaurant or as a bar. So you have to prove that you have the work ethic, the integrity as a cash handler. um if even holding credit cards and things like that, so you need to show that you have ethics, like a moral integrity in that sense, that you hustle, you're a hard worker, you have a positive mental attitude, of course, and that you can communicate and get along with people. Now, with that said, if you have that and you can get the job, um, if you're able to convince an employer to give you the opportunity or to give you a shot, and that you're going to grow into the position and work hard to close the gap of where you are to where they want you to be, there's two types of practice. One type is while you're at the bar, you're practicing your skill set of pouring and engaging guests, sequence of service, steps of service, standard operating procedures for operating a bar and doing the position. The other practice is when you're off the field. Instead of going out with a team in your learning phase of bartending, and most people should be learning in the beverage world their whole career, but as especially as you're starting out, instead of going out for a shift drink or whatever afterwards, you should be practicing off the field. And what I mean by that is you're going to have messed up along the way, as we all do, as I still do. And that first hour to 2 hours after your shift is the best time to debrief the shift mentally, as opposed to decompress and forget about it, because
Mm,
that's going to help you build the mental representations to identify what you did not so good and give you the ideas to do it better, and the power and recognizability to notice that situation during service the following day. In addition to off the bar practice or away from the bar practice is your the practice of studying and understanding your menu, what you offer, and then getting a general knowledge of what you have on the bar. Even if you don't know the ins and out of every single spirit or bottle, it's good to know the generalization of each particular spirit class, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting towards your cocktails. Bartending is something that it takes some time to kind of get the flow of it, but if you can find a mentor or somebody that's willing to train you and kind of steer you in the right direction, and they're good at what they do, just follow their lead in a sense. Like if they say you're to work on this, work on that, and assume that you're doing okay on the other things, because otherwise they'd have you focus on it. Bartending is not hard. I think anybody can do it. It just takes dedicated effort. But I think that the upside potential uh, to bartending at the right place along with the right team can be a fulfilling experience for however long that a person chooses to do so. But I definitely don't like I don't want to suggest that it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely believe that anybody potentially can grow into it. I'm not the fastest thinker. There's nothing that I do behind the bar is really original. Everything that I've done that I execute behind the bar, I've learned from somebody else, whether it was somebody I directly mentored under, or when I was at a bar, I watched the bartender, I see them do something, I like it, I take it with me. I call it the shopping cart approach. You have a department store that you're walking through with a shopping cart. Every aisle that you walk through is a different bartender you work with or that you've seen. You leave the stuff that's not going to serve you, and you take the stuff that will, the skills, the things that they do. And once your shopping cart is full, you have a pretty good technical approach to operating the bar. And it's just how long you take to fill that shopping cart.
Yeah. I think that's some really great advice. I do the shopping cart thing at the gym. I was like, oh, that exercise looks pretty cool. I might need to throw that in my repertoire, my routine. Can't say the other word. And the debriefing versus the decompressing, I think that is like a universal statement or practice that people across all professions or jobs can like use or do, because I think a lot of times in corporate America, the whole happy hour thing is they go to decompress and not debrief. So I definitely will be using that soundbite.
For sure, yeah. That was not original by me, anyways. Everything that I ever do, everything that I ever say, even the one-liners I have behind the bar, I've gotten it from other bartenders, mentors, people I respect, things like that. And I think what is that term? Was it copying is like the best form of flattery,
Oh yeah,
or whatever.
imitation or
Imitation is the
yeah.
best form of flattery. I'm very much a proponent of that. I'm not original by any means, and that's why I think that anybody can do it if they want to, if they're at least willing to put in the work.
Mhm.
That's all. Like I mean, anyone can, as long as they're willing to go through the process.
Cool. Well, I don't think I have anything else. That I had my first official Joe Rogan podcast because we have reached the 2 hour over the 2 hour time limit. So I'm excited.
That's what's up.
This was really 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 good. So I mean I know we probably could go for 2 more hours, but um we'll just have to have you back on. I'm pretty sure this will be a pretty popular one because I think a lot of people you know like to drink, so this would be interesting to hear like the ins and out of a bartender's work life and how somebody goes on and from a young age or early adulthood and get into that career field. As much as I, read and watch TV and buy the books, I learned a lot today. So I'm pretty sure the listeners will as well. The listeners and the viewers.
Appreciate you having me on the podcast today.
Yeah, no problem. Do you want to tell people what you have going on or where they can reach you at?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I think my tag is EHH173, and email for our consulting group is evan@chaoticcocktails.com.
Nice. I like that chaotic cocktails.
I wish I could say that was original from me, but it was. But again, no, it was my buddy. I'm luckily I'm surrounded by very creative people. The guys that I consult with, my buddy Daniel and Luis. They're both previously with me at the Cocktail Collective as well as Wakuda. We all complement each other very well, and yeah, it's a fun industry. Like we have a good time.
I bet. Nice. Well, Evan, thanks for being on the show, and I really enjoyed you and
Thanks for having
learning
me.
all about bartending and liquors and wines and sakis and rice and wheats and how the wind blows the heavier wheats down and the grains and all that stuff. So it's been very, very informative. So I hope you
That's
have a
my
good
pleasure.
night, and we have to have
You
you
as
back.
well. 100%.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.